Welcome to the Green Building Show, where we investigate green design and building trends throughout Australia.
Hello and welcome to the Green Building Show for 2014. Are you thinking of renovating? Because if you are, you're probably wondering about the design trends for the coming year. And here's where you can let the Green Building Show do some of the spade work for you. First, let's get back to basics. It's colour. And with me today is colour consultant and interior designer Katrina Hill. Welcome.
Thank you, Peter.
So tell me, the colour trends for 2014, what are we looking at?
Dulux is talking about 4 colour trends, and there's 2 that look backwards and there's 2 that look forwards. The 2 that look backwards, the first one is called Romantic Spirit, and it's a sort of a harking to a kind of a soft and dusty and gorgeous colour palette that is a little bit retro and a bit inspired by the influence of lots of historic films that we've been seeing lately. The second one is Retro Visionaries, and that's a much brighter, much more youthful colour scheme. It's got lots of bolds and brights and dynamic colours. It has a kind of a 50s edginess to it, but it's used in a new way. It's definitely a new generation taking images from the past and recolouring them in a bright and bold way. The 2 forward sort of forecasts, Precious Elementals, which is one that I'm really interested in because I feel that it's got a lot of its basis in, Australia's so concerned about mining and resources and the elements and the preciousness of our earth and watching things and being careful with our natural resources. So in that forecast there's a lot of metals and timbers, and everything looks very natural. Other forecast that's quite new is called Digital Nomads, and that is really interesting because it's about people adopting things into their environment and their lives that they haven't necessarily seen. It's producing a much more eclectic kind of interior, which is not a look that all comes from one country.
As we said before, you're a colour consultant and you work by the principles of nonverbal communication using colour. Talk to me about that.
There's colours that soothe people. There's colours that pick people up. There's colours that quieten people down. There's colours that evoke all sorts of different responses. We use it commonly in retail. We try to engage people to buy something. In restaurants, we use it to engage people to eat and drink. If you're talking about your home, the aspects of colour we would need to consider are making people feel comfortable, making people feel relaxed, making people feel at home. When we come to selling a house, we'd be talking about things like the wow factor. So it has to have that edge of where it feels like a family home and feels like somewhere you want to live, but it has that thing that when you walk in, it actually grabs you and you can envisage yourself and your family, complete with 2 dogs, living in this house.
But everybody's different. So you're selling your house, right? How do you select a colour that's going to influence people to buy it? Or is there no such colour?
There's many options for that colour, for the perfect colour. There's not just one perfect colour for any situation. However, what people respond to is something that's done really well. And that means that, say for example the walls and the skirting boards and the architraves, tone or do what they're supposed to do. We employ as colour consultants lots of tricks where we try to fool the eye, where we might try to make something that's close to us seem further away. We might use a colour to make it recede, we might use a colour to make it advance. We might, I always talk about paint being like makeup, how we use it to highlight the good bits and to conceal the bad bits. So there's the tricky elements to that. The general public finds that difficult to do, and that's one of the fascinating things about studying colour, is learning those little tricks.
So it's not just what the real estate agents tell you, which is, white throughout or just off-whites.
White throughout is a phenomenon that's been around for a couple of years now. One of the reasons is I think that people are just exhausted and if they can perceive a clean environment, it seems to make them feel that their life is somehow more pulled together and not quite so fraught with work and kids and juggling and the, you know, the busyness of traffic in cities, etc. White works where there's good natural light. It doesn't work in dark spaces. If you paint a little dark hallway white, it still looks like a little dark hallway painted white. But if you paint a darker colour and pop it with a white trim and a white ceiling, you can walk in and go, wow, this looks amazing. I mean, that's the theatre that colour can have.
Are there any particular rules for colour and rules that you can break?
There are rules for colour. We all learn them at, you know, interior design school and colour school, and there's standard sort of colour schemes, which are things like monochromatic colour schemes and complementary and tertiary. I think what's happening is that people are challenging colour. There's a kind of irreverence out there where colour's being used in different ways. People are using colour to create tension. I see it a lot in digital media. We see it with product, but also in interiors and exteriors to a lesser extent. People are taking what traditionally might have always been coloured one way, like for a ceiling for example, and having some fun with it, building tension. Job we were talking about that I did recently was where we had an orange ceiling painted over a staircase. It looks fantastic. But the client can change it in 6 months' time when they want to get rid of it. So there's those sort of quirky little things that are happening.
And one piece of must-know advice on colour.
The biggest mistake I see people making time and time again is that they go and they choose paint colour off-site. So what that means is they might go to a hardware store and choose their paint chips, look at them under fluorescent light, or they might go and choose it at a friend's house and the friend's house is facing south but their house is facing north. They might, and then they make that decision to paint that colour without having looked at it in their own home. So what I always say is grab the paint chips, take them back to where you're going to paint them and look at them in the light that's actually occurring in your home. You'll be amazed at how different something will look in Bunnings to your living room.
So you can't choose colour online either then?
No, you can't choose colour online. I mean, we've all had experiences with t-shirts we bought that have been the wrong colour or, you know, whatever, but it's exactly the same with paint. It's, you know, until we have competent calibration that everybody has the same monitors, you can't choose colour online. You actually physically have to look at the paint.
Katrina, thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome.
That's Katrina Hill, colour consultant and interior designer, and that's it from the Green Building Show for this week. See you next week.